Shalum. Shalom and welcome. Welcome to White Rose family. My name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I'm compelled to present before an awakening set-apart nation. This is Visible Countermeasures, Part 6. Visible Countermeasures, Part 6. I want to bring your attention to something that is critical during these end times, and that's the words called and chosen. You see, my brothers and sisters, there are many who will hear the calls from the Almighty Father. In the name of Yahusha, we will hear the calls. And there are those that will rebel, those that will be fighting against those who are unlearned and undiscerning. But there are those chosen for specific tasks that are mentioned in end-time prophecy, such that the scriptures speak of martyrs for Yahusha's name. Therefore, someone is chosen to do it. It's not going to be it might be martyrs. The scriptures speak of 144,000 Hebrews, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes as mentioned in Revelation 7th chapter. 7:9 talks about the great multitude. So you see, my brothers and sisters, there are some individuals that are chosen that will definitely happen. It's not an if, and might. It's not going to glaze over them. There are those who will hear the call and not respond. Thus, the scriptures read, many are called, but few are chosen. And I'll bring that passage up in a moment. But right now, during these end times, intense times are coming. Uncertainty is growing. But before I get into this, my brothers and sisters, let me read the disclaimer. Feel free to fast forward if you like. Warning and disclaimer. The information contained in White Rose family represent instructions and warnings to individuals who believe they are drawn by the Almighty Creator Yahuah to Yahusha Mashyach. I'm referencing John 6:44. The content presented centers around end-time realities. Please be advised, this site is not intended for children under 16 years of age due to its content. It has to be compliant with the various video platforms that I'm using. By continuing forward, you agree to hold Symmanayah harmless of any influence and or actions that arise as a result of watching, listening, and reviewing the content presented. The views expressed do not reflect the owners, management, and or shareholders of this media platform. Please note that I am not affiliated with anyone or organization with similar names. With that said, my brothers and sisters, called and chosen. Why do I believe this title earns the category of visible countermeasures? You see, my brothers and sisters, as uncertainty increases, even as the world becomes aware of who the true Hebrews are, even as the world come to the point where they acknowledge the true Hebrews, Abrahym, as well as the Gentiles who are grafted in, together made one under the banner of Yashar'al by Yahusha Mashyach. I want to say to you, O Yashar'al, as the stirring, as the calls, as the drawing power of the Almighty Father intensify, it would be challenging to identify those called and chosen, but not impossible. Let's get into some scriptures. Excuse me. I want you to remember the drawn, for it is written, my brothers and sisters, I talk about often those that are drawn by the Almighty Father Yahuah. And I've read this before, but I want to read these again. I talk often, my brothers and sisters, as I was saying, uncertainty is becoming widespread. In other words, many people don't know what to do, where to go, who to draw close to. It's a challenge, my brothers and sisters. It's a challenge that I am widely aware of. But I want you to be encouraged that though the text might be in front of your eyes, though you may hear someone reading it to you, trust and believe the Almighty Father knows what he's doing. He knows those that are his. And those who are being drawn by him are experiencing a stirring inside, some which they cannot identify as of yet. But let me read this. Then Yahusha answered, said to them, do not grumble with one another. No one is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. And I shall raise him up in the last day. I want to also take your attention. That was John 6:43 and 44. So remember the drawn. John 12:31 and 32. I want you to come to me. Come with me to John 12:31 and 32. It reads as follows. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world shall be cast out. And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, shall draw all men to myself. My brothers and sisters, it is important for us to realize that in our worship and obedience to the Almighty Father, we honor him by being guided and directed and taught by his Spirit sent in Yahusha's name. We begin to recognize how the scriptures can indeed come alive through us, one towards another, and as we read the text. I want you to come with me now because it is important to recognize that there is a shepherd. So it's important to know the shepherd and his voice and know that we are sealed. Trust and believe that. John 10:27 say, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them and they follow me. His sheep. It doesn't say just the Hebrews or Abrahym. It doesn't say just the Gentiles. It says his sheep. So be mindful, those who are made one by Yahusha Mashyach are his sheep. Revelation 7:2 and 3 says, and I saw another messenger coming from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Almighty One. And he cried with a loud voice to the four messengers to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Almighty One upon their foreheads. My brothers and sisters, I believe and trust that the actions of the servants from the messengers from the Almighty Father who sealed us in our foreheads, I believe that this has occurred. Look at the trees, look at the seas, look at the land, how they are being destroyed, how they are being harmed. I want to say to you, O Yashar'al, in the coming days, we will recognize his voice working in us as we begin to gather. There will be those who hear his voice and respond and follow him. We will recognize the sealed of the Almighty Father. Confirmation will come. Among the called and the chosen, my brothers and sisters, we recognize that Yashar'al is currently scattered in more ways than we can imagine. We're scattered, we're mixed in, but Yashar'al, it's time to not be distracted with the protests. Time is a valuable thing. The Almighty Father and all those that are gathering in their midst are individuals who are in the protest, in the midst of the making their voices known. But know this, my brothers and sisters, some of the people that want to usher in change, that are in the protests against racism and discrimination, some in that mix, my brothers and sisters, are the very ones that will readily accept a chip in their right hand or forehead. Some of them will readily accept a one world government for quote unquote peace. It is important to know how to focus. It is important to know when to be involved and when to come away. In the midst of all the people you see in uproar and those that aren't, there will be a sifting from the Almighty Father, a sorting the people, the great sifting. Consider Amos 9:8-10. Amos 9:8-10, and I've put it up before because it is imperative, important. It's needed, my brothers and sisters. Look, the eyes of the Master Yahuah are on the sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Yahuah. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Yashar'al among all the nations, as one sift of a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. All the sinners of my people are going to die by the sword. Those who are saying evil does not overtake us nor meet us. Yashar'al, there's a sifting. I've spoken of this before. End times will prove that there's a great tug of war going. The question is, do you sense a pulling from the Almighty Father? Do you sense that He is guiding you to Him? And in His guiding, in His pulling, in His drawing, have you ran into another or others that are receiving the same drawing from the Almighty Father? Others who are growing to discern and know when to stand firm in the task that they are given by the Almighty Father, and when to confirm and embrace and fall into position. Watch, O Yashar'al, in this great tug of war, we will witness the 144,000 and great multitude rise. Yes, my brothers and sisters, there will be a coming together. Things are getting intense, my brothers and sisters. What do you think is happening right now? Are you in the right place? Are you where you need to be? Pray and watch, O Yashar'al. The tug of war will be intense. Let's visit Proverbs 14:26. I mentioned it before, my brothers and sisters. 14:26. And the fear of Yahuah is strong trust, and his children have a place of refuge. I submit to you that place of refuge will be intermittent. In other words, we may be safe in one place for now, but tomorrow we may have to move. And the next day we might find ourselves moving. And we will move gradually, we will rest up, and we'll move and gradually move again. There will be structure, there will be leadership, O Yashar'al. Trust him, fear Yahuah, and witness the knowledge that comes behind that, the knowledge that comes with that fear of him and him alone. Matthew 20, verse 16 say, thus the last shall be first and the first last, for many are called, but few are chosen. My brothers and sisters, I know these words seem repetitive. If you're tired of listening to them, do as you believe you're guided. For some, this is the first time you listen to it. For others, it's like more water to strengthen and reinforce what's ahead. Let me continue. My brothers and sisters, one of the reasons why I mentioned visible countermeasures is because if you go left, you're missing the opportunity to go right. If you go right, you're missing the opportunity to go left. If you go forward and you adamantly choose to go forward, you're missing the opportunity to go back and remember where you've fallen to get back on track. Countermeasures means that as the Almighty Father is directing our footsteps, there are others that would choose to direct our footsteps in an effort to counter the orders we're receiving from the Almighty Father. It's time to discern the identity of the restrainer. For it is necessary to recognize that those who will be in the ranks of the final Exodus, those who will be used by the Almighty Father in some phenomenal ways, we are the restrainer. Consider 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 5 through 7 through 8. Do you not remember that I told you this while I was still with you? And now you know what restrains for him to be revealed in his time. It's talking about the anti-Messiah, or what is known as the Antichrist. You can read further towards the beginning of this chapter. I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that there is a restrainer and something that holds it back, and that's us. Verse 7, for the secret of lawlessness is already at work, only until he who now restrains come out of the midst. Many people take this to think that means the rapture. No, it does not. It does not mean the pre-tribulation rapture. The final Exodus will result in Yahuah gathering his children from the four corners of the earth. It says, until he who now restrains come out of the midst. And then the lawless one shall be revealed, whom the master shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and bring to naught with the manifestation of his coming. I also have here posted one of the verses that support the final Exodus. That's Isaiah 11:12. For the sake of time, I will not read it, for I speak of it often. Yashar'al, or Yashar'al. We must not forget there will be 144,000. There will be a great multitude. Revelation 7th chapter speaks on that. 7:4, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of the tribes of the children of Yashar'al. So for those who will rather grab the scripture, one verse, and say that we're neither Jew nor Greek, Hebrew nor Gentile, for those who rather take that and say it doesn't matter, it does. How can you identify those that can fulfill Revelation 7:4 if we cannot identify who the true Hebrews, Abrahym, are, and who the true Gentiles are? How can we acknowledge that we're made one, two distinct nations, the chosen nation of Yashar'al with the 12 tribes listed in the 7th chapter, and a great multitude of many nations, kindreds, and tongues? Are you not aware of the 9th verse in the 7th chapter? Say, after this I looked and saw a great crowd which no one was able to count, out of all nations, tribes, and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Almighty One who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. And if you doubt that they came out of the tribulation, consider these words. And one of the elders responded, saying to me, this is verse 13 and 14 of the 7th chapter of Revelation, who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? And he said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, these are those coming out of the great distress, having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, there will be those revealed. There will be those who will witness specific tasks given to them by the Almighty Father. Tasks that requires the gathering, the structuring, the demonstration of fulfilling what is written. There will be a revealing of those selected to do specific tasks. And you may indeed find yourself drawn to the Almighty Father to lead, to serve, to fortify, to take on a position that makes the end time prophecies promise whole and clear before the world. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. It is important that we begin to ask questions, that we begin to see what measures that the Most High have for us, what tasks are for us, that we can identify the countermeasures that will steer us off in the wrong direction, that we discern exactly what he's saying to us, through us, one towards another. I want to share this passage, a passage that I've shared before, because I cannot stress enough how focus is important. It says here in Proverbs 4:25-27, Proverbs 4, verse 25-27. Let your eyelids look forward and your eyelids. Let your eyes look forward and your eyelids look straight before you. Consider the path of your feet, and all your ways are established. Do not turn to the right or the left. Turn your foot away from evil. My brothers and sisters, what he's saying is do not establish this law that always go left or always go right. Do not establish a position where you get caught up in these political ideologies that say you're going too far to the left, meaning you're too liberal, or you're going too far to the right, meaning you're too conservative, as they would have you believe in many of these democratic nations, especially in the United States. We must focus. It says here, do not turn to the right or left. Turn your foot away from evil. That is the key, my brothers and sisters, turning away from evil. Proverbs 6:4 says, give no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. If you look around, my brothers and sisters, there are many during these challenging times saying, I haven't slept. I can't sleep. I'm quite sure if you looked at your feeds, your conversations, your one-on-ones, you'll see the words from people saying, I haven't been getting much sleep. Because many people who look forward are uncertain what's ahead, and they're desirous to find out. Some thirst and hunger for truth and knowledge and guidance. Some are receiving it and putting it to the test to make sure what they receive is indeed true. End times will prove the need to identify the chosen ones and come together and be fitly joined together and set apartness, my brothers and sisters. Let me also read something that I think is relative to this segment. Come with me, my brothers and sisters. You know, it's so important to discern living instructions and be mindful of the time. You see, my brothers and sisters, as things change, as we face these challenges, we're not going to have time for entertainment. We're not going to have time to just play quote unquote church. Soon and very soon we will realize we're not going to have time to conduct ourselves in the manner which we have in the past. Matthew 24:22 saying, if those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the sake of the chosen ones, those days shall be shortened. I submit to you, I presented it before and I present it again, and I waver not. The days will be shortened as a result of moving from one time zone to the next. If you look at the time in California as it relates to Central Standard Time, as it relates to Eastern Time, as it relates to the time over in the Promised Land, there's a difference in hours. And if you're moving from the furthest west to the east, your days will be shortened. And as the Almighty Father gather us from the four corners of the earth, many of us will witness that's what it means by the days being shortened. Movement, my brothers and sisters, will come such that it will cut off the days as we know it. Colossians 4:5 say, walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Yashar'al. I cannot stress enough. Time is of the importance. Are you ready to choose? Have you chosen which route you would take, which direction you would take? Have you chosen? your leader, your moray, your teacher, your pastor, bishop? Are you one of those who are leading? Are you equipping those who are following you with the words they need, with the instructions and demonstrations they need in the event of your passing? Choose wisely, my brothers and sisters. In the midst of civil unrest comes the need to know how to navigate through all the conflicts. In the midst of economic distress, know how to respond and what to do. In the midst of widespread death and destruction, know what to do. In the midst of protests and riots, know when to engage and when to disengage. In the midst of wicked leaders and false prophets, as they are exposed, know when to come away or purge them from your midst. It is important, O Yashar'al, for us to identify the obedient of Abba Yahuah's spirit, of Abba Yahuah working in us, through us. It is important to be in the right place at the right time. My brothers and sisters, countermeasures, as I have named this segment, visible countermeasures. In military, if an airplane was flying and the missile was shot at it, with the intentions, of course, to bring it down, the aircraft have countermeasures that they let out to confuse the trajectory of that missile that's trying to take it out. Countermeasures that have heat sources for missiles that are guided by heat. So it is with us, O Yashar'al, as we rise high in set apartness, as we rise up with the strength of set apartness, the wicked one shoots at us, fires targets us for destruction and failure, but we'll lose. When we're able to identify visible countermeasures that the wicked one is trying to use because he believes we are targeting him or her, we'll know what we're supposed to do. Maybe I messed up on that example. The bottom line with countermeasures here, my brothers and sisters, I'm talking about countermeasures that the wicked one is using to try to counteract what the Almighty Father is saying for us to do. There are plans. Consider existing set-apart plans regarding movement, Yashar'al. If you've listened to many of my videos before, you've heard me speak of the different things that are important in the plans for the Almighty Father's children. There will be relocation. There will be deliverance. There will be lifestyle changes. There will be those included and those left behind. You can pause the slide and look at the bullets, my brothers and sisters. For the sake of time, I'll press on. Even in this next slide, know that all plans come with a cost, my brothers and sisters. They come with a cost. Whether it's resources, supplies, whether it's finances, or service, they come with a cost. Count the cost, my brothers and sisters. Use what the Most High has given you, or risk losing it. Remember Matthew 25:14-30. The realities of truth are before us, O Yashar'al. I've set up a Cash App, White Rose Family, if you'd like to support the initiatives that I find myself led to build and contribute towards the gathering of Yashar'al. But I also say and invite you to email me if you'd like to begin dialogue. Let us begin to get acquainted with one another. Let us begin to know one another. Let us begin to vet and ask questions. Let us begin to decide and acknowledge those whom we believe the Most High has called or chosen, and respond. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, what are you doing this evening? What will you do in the morning? What is your week like? You believe and you have more time. Some of you will. There will be some that will die tonight, tomorrow. And there will be many that will live and rise up in the midst of all that is happening. My brothers and sisters, remember Deuteronomy 8:3. Man doesn't live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Almighty Father. So as death ramp up, as conditions ramp up, trust the plan of the Almighty Father and know that we're drawing closer to that time for the physical return of Yahusha Mashyach. If you find yourself experiencing something stirring inside, I suggest that you pray, study, pray some more, and seek to discern what that stirring is to the set-apart children of Yahuah. That stirring is the spirit of Abba Yahuah within us to work a work that is phenomenal and extraordinary. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, I salute your patience, your tolerance, your pursuit of set-apartness. Be mindful of the visible countermeasures that will try to steer you away from the trajectory that the Most High wants you to be on, me to be on, us to be on. And when we're mindful of these countermeasures, we know when to come away from the things that distract us. Hear these words of Yashar'al. End times are here. On that note, I say to you, my brother, my sister, Shalum.